Liam is organizing this event. It's a charity-oriented event like others that happened just recently. And does it say recording? It says recording. And this one will have over 50 sessions, different sessions on Power BI and Excel topics. I'm sure it will have amazing content, and it will cost only $33. And the sessions will be recorded. We will be able to watch the recordings after, according to your time available. So I just wanted to mention this because I think it's a great value for anyone who may be interested in improving their skills. I wanted to also quickly mention some of the sessions that will be happening next, not only with the Toronto Meetup group, but also with the London Meetup group organized by Alan Murray. I think he is there somewhere. And we have not been coordinating, but it looks like a little bit, it looks a little bit like we have been coordinating things. Not all the sessions are listed here, but only the ones that I saw that very quickly they could seem related. So I'm just letting you know about these sessions here so that you can also attend the London Meetup sessions in case you find the topic interesting to you. So today we will have an introduction to PowerPivot and DAX. And Abdou again will be coming, presenting to us the next session in June the 25th about time intelligence in DAX. So these are topics related to building data models in Excel or Power BI, but in this case in Excel. And those who work with data models, PowerPivot and DAX will inevitably be also working with a Power Query. And working with Power Query, at some point you will find the need of improving your skills with M code because it will give you more flexibility in building in Power Query what you need. So I'm very excited about the session that will happen tomorrow at the London's Meetup group by Gasper Kamanesk, and it will be about lists in Power Query. So I strongly recommend. I'm looking forward to it. And then there will be other two sessions related. Both about Office scripts. We already had one introductory session here beginning of April that was not recorded, but was about JavaScript and Excel and building add-ins and all that. And I know that there's some people very interested in that kind of topic. So Paul Kelly will be presenting to the London's Meetup group about an introduction to Office scripts for Excel. And then it will be kind of a part two of that topic will be with us in the Toronto Meetup group. And it will be about creating an Office script from scratch. So just wanted to mention, feel free to check those sessions in case the topic is interesting to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to start presenting
Hey, Sia, I can't hear you.
It seems that I muted myself by mistake.
Okay.
You should be listening to me now.
Yeah, I'm able to hear you now.
Great. Thank you. So Abdul, he's a data analyst, and he is originally from Egypt, but he's living here in Canada. We met over a year ago when this group idea popped up, and Ashraf, that was presenting with us some time ago, introduced us to because he thought we would be good partners to run this group, and so we started the group along with 2 other people. And Abdou now is taking his time, putting his time in other projects. He has 2 YouTube channels about Excel, one in English called Excel Bonanza and Excellawy in Arabic. So those of you who speak Arabic can also check that YouTube channel. And he has other content online. He will talk about that, including some courses and a lot of value that he's been creating for the Excel community. So thank you so much, Abdou, for being with us today. And feel free to take the mic and the camera and the screen and let us know what you have for us today.
Sure. Thank you, Celia. I will start presenting now. Just a second. So, and I've started sharing. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes. Introduction to PowerPivot and DAX.
Hey guys. So I'm Abdelrahman Abdou. I will be presenting today about PowerPivot and DAX. So a bit about myself. I'm a data analyst. I'm a senior analyst at Rogers, and I've been working in the telecom industry for the last 10 years, and I've been working with Excel for the last 10 years too. And my website is excelbonanza.com. I'm a certified Microsoft Excel expert. I've been in Canada here for about 3 years now. Almost. Time flies so fast. And I'm also an online instructor, and I'm a YouTuber. I have 2 YouTube channels, one in English and one in Arabic. The English one is Excel Bonanza, and the Arabic one is Excellawy. And yeah, so that's a little bit about myself. And let's start our presentation. So first of all, what is DAX? We're going to speak today about DAX, but there's going to be a significant portion of Power Query too, because you can't really entirely separate PowerPivot and Power Query, because if you want to go to PowerPivot, the better way to do it is through Power Query, because this is the better way to import the data. There's another way, of course, that we're going to speak about through the PowerPivot window, but Power Query is a better way. So what is DAX? DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions, and it is the language used for writing formulas in PowerPivot and Power BI. So when you learn DAX, you're definitely going to benefit from it, both in PowerPivot for Excel and in Power BI as well. And it allows you to manipulate the filters on your tables and perform some really powerful calculations that you otherwise almost cannot perform in Excel with the same degree of automation as well. So it's going to be when you learn DAX and you dive deep into it, you're really going to notice that it's just a lot of power. There's a lot of power under the hood of DAX. And of course, we're not gonna dive really deep in DAX today. It's just an introduction, and the purpose of today's meetup is not for you to be a DAX expert, because that's not gonna happen in an hour and a half. The purpose is to give you a taste of what DAX can do, and to give you motivation to learn DAX and PowerPivot. And of course, the DAX engine can handle tables having millions of rows, which is beyond the capacity of regular Excel. So this is one of the really points. This is really one of the points of strength of DAX, which is that it can handle tables having millions and even tens of millions of rows. And I've tried that myself, and the bottleneck mainly relies in how much memory, how much RAM you've got on your computer. So amongst other things, but of course, having a lot of RAM does help a lot. Okay, so let's actually start working with Excel. So in order to build a data model, we need to bring in some tables. Okay, or let me before doing that, let me speak about PowerPivot in Excel in terms of how you can get it. PowerPivot is available from Excel 2010 onwards. You can get it in Excel 2010 and in Excel 2013 by downloading the add-ins. So you can download the add-ins from Microsoft's website. If you just search PowerPivot add-in download for Excel 2010 or for Excel 2013, and the same applies to Power Query as well. So you should be able to get PowerPivot and Power Query via the add-ins. So, and then you're going to download these add-ins and then just set them up. Just go through a normal setup where you just keep on pressing next. And then after you do that, you can just right click anywhere in the ribbon and then go to customize the ribbon here. If you go to add-ins, and you will find here COM add-ins, and if you click on go, you will see here Microsoft PowerPivot for Excel. And if you're using Excel 2010 and 2013, you should see Microsoft Power Query. So you're just going to check these and click OK, and you're going to have a tab called PowerPivot on the ribbon and another one called Power Query. That is if you're using Excel 2010 or 2013. If you're using 2016 or later, or Office 365, then you're going to have them as the PowerPivot tab on the ribbon, and you're going to have Power Query under the Data tab on the ribbon. Okay, so that's how you can get PowerPivot and Power Query. Okay, and so let's start bringing in some tables in order to create our data model. So I'm going to go to Get Data here, and I'm going to launch the Power Query editor. And I'm going to start my first query here, which is to get data from a text or CSV. They are all CSV files here. So I'm just going to paste in here the file. I just copied the file from the Windows navigator, and then I just pasted it, and it's just going to open. So this is our customers table. Okay, and you get a preview of the table here. So I'm going to press OK because I want to do further manipulation of the table. So here, the only thing I'm going to do to this table is we've got the customer ID and the territory ID. I'm just going to make them here a text because these are IDs. They are not numbers to be added or subtracted. We're not going to do any arithmetic operations on these numbers. And now I'm going to bring in my products table too. So this is actually the AdventureWorks database. And here's a preview of my products table. And I'm going to click OK. And so I'm going to convert the product ID to a text to the category ID and the subcategory ID. I don't think I have any other IDs here. So I'm going to convert these to a text. And now for the sales table. I'm going to click OK here. Okay, so here I've got the customer ID, territory ID, sales order ID, and product ID. Okay, and I'm going to convert these to a text too. And for the order date, it's actually detected it as a text data type, and this should be a date. But let's try converting it to a date. And you can see here we're starting to get an error. So sometimes things are not going to be perfect, and you'll have to do some data cleaning. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to split this column. So I'm going to do the transformation here where I'm going to split this column. So I'm going to split it by a delimiter, and the delimiter is going to be the slash, and this will split it into 3 columns. So I'll have a column containing my day, so order date, day, and this one will contain my month, and this one will contain my year. All right, and I'm going to join these 3 columns into a date again. So I'm going to create a custom column here, and this is going to be the order date. And I'm going to use the date function here. And this has 3 arguments. You give it the year and the month and the day, and it will generate the date for you. And then I'm going to convert this again to a date, and I'm going to move it to the beginning. And I'm going to remove these 3 columns because I don't need them anymore. Okay, so now we have our date, and I'm going to import the territories table as well. So this contains our locations. And I'm going to make the territory ID a text too. All right, so we've got these tables, but now we're missing actually the most important table that you're probably going to have in all your data models, which is your calendar table, your dates table. All right, so you can actually create a calendar table from scratch using Power Query, and we're going to do that now. So we're going to do it using a new query. We're going to open a blank new query, brand new query, a blank query here. And we're going to use the list.dates function here. And the starting date, actually my sales data spans between 2011 and 2014. I know that because I've seen the data. So our dates table should span between the 1st of January 2011 and the 31st of December 2014. So first of all, we need to input our starting date. So our starting date is going to be 2011-01-01, right? Because this function takes year, month, and then day. This is going to be our starting date. And then now it's going to be the count of the steps that we're going to take. Our step is going to be 1 day, right? Because we want to we want our days to go by, day by day. So our steps, let's put just any number for now. Let's put 1,000 for now, and then we'll come back to that later. And then the step here is going to be duration, using the duration function. And this accepts the number of days, 1, and then the number of hours, number of minutes, and number of seconds. Now let's get back to this one here. And this should be, so I put 1,000. This is just an arbitrary number. Okay, if I press enter for now, I should get a list of dates. Oh, I'm missing something. Oh, I'm missing an R here. And I got here 1,000 dates, but I don't know the number of dates or days exactly that I have. So I need to make that more automated. So I'm gonna make it as the ending date, 2014 12/31, minus the starting date. If I'm not making so many typos. And okay, so if I do that right now,
Abdul,
I'm actually,
can I interrupt you just a little bit?
Sure.
Just being mindful that some of the people here may have not seen this type of calculations and even the query editor, Power Query Editor before. So would you like just to take the opportunity and let us know what kind of language is that? What are you writing there, and how? Just that for now, so that people don't get don't get overwhelmed and see, well, this is not Excel. What is this? And maybe jump out of the session.
Okay, guys, so this is the M language. This is done using the M language. The M language is the language that we use in order to write Power Query formulas and write Power Query code. So the reason we're doing this is that we need to go through Power Query first before going to PowerPivot. So please, hang in there. Don't get bored. We're gonna get. I know that you want to learn PowerPivot, but you can't separate them easily. So, right?
Is it still possible? Is it still possible to start with PowerPivot without knowing a lot of knowing M code? What do you think?
No, it is. It is possible. It is.
Yeah. So the importation of data from different sources and then connection of data. Those different pieces of data in PowerPivot, you can do that just using Power Query, all the buttons and features that we have available. You can perfectly start by in there, and don't worry about not knowing M code. And then if you keep practicing and if you have the opportunity of to work with Power Query a lot, you will you will get to a point where but in this particular situation, I really need to know and how do something that I don't see a button for that here. And then you will have the opportunity to research online, and you will get to a point where you will start using M and creating these type of queries, custom queries. Okay, thank you, Abdul. Sorry for interrupting you, but I thought I know that there's different people with different skills attending, and I think it would be good to let them know what was going on.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, the purpose is not really for you to become an expert after this this session. The purpose is to show you what's possible, and I just need you not to worry about the steps or memorizing the steps. You can watch the video again or so. The purpose is to just focus and try to understand what we're doing and see what is possible with PowerPivot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so if I do this right now, I'm gonna get an error. I'm gonna try to be quick on that one. So what we need to do is to convert this to a number, and I believe this should be through the number.from function. And if I press enter, I should be able to get my list of dates here, and I'm going to convert that to a table now. And I'm going to click OK here. I don't want any delimiters, and there are no extra columns, so we should be OK. And then I'm going to convert this to a date. And this is going to be my date column here. And this is going to be my calendar table. So what we've done right now is that we are trying to bring data from different data sources, okay? And these will be our tables. So we've got a customers table, products, sales, and territories, and calendar. Now let's build more columns into that calendar table. So we can add more columns here. You could select your date column here and then go to add column. And then from this date button here, you can add the year, for example. So this will add your year. So this is an easy way to add more columns. You can add the month too. This is going to be the month number. This is, you can add also the name of the month. And if you don't like the long name, you can shorten it too. If you go to transform, extract, and you extract the first 3 characters, you press OK. Now we've shortened it, and you can also add the week of the year, and you can add the quarter, and we'll speak about that. So about the week, you can add the week of the year here, but it will. Oh, I've done that through the transform tab. I should be doing it through the add column tab. So what happened here is that if you do it through the transform tab, it's gonna overwrite the column. But if you do through the add column tab, you're gonna add a new column with the transformation that you're doing, so add a new column with the week of the year or so. So here, if you do week of the year, it's gonna default to whatever your system is set up as, as what is the first day of the week on your system. But if you want to be able to customize that and have it so that if it runs on any system, it would give you consistent results, it's better that you do it through adding a new column. So if you do a custom column, and then this is going to be the week number. And then it's going to be date dot week of year. I don't know why when I press tab, it always gives me double dates. I don't know why this is the case. If anyone knows the answer to that question, it would be great.
Another thing, Abdou, sorry to interrupt you. Every now and then, I know that in Power Query, it's not easy to make a zoom, but if every now and then you can try a zoom, maybe with a magnifier or something, so that people can see what you're typing, it would be great. Maybe not doing that too much, because then it will delay the session a lot, but for the most important formulas, maybe.
I'm not sure if
you press Windows plus, oh, there you go. I think you're getting that. If you press Windows key and plus, you will get the magnifier, and then you can move around, and it should take you to where you are with the mouse. But if you're not familiar, that's fine. Just let's proceed then.
Okay,
there you go.
I think I should be able to do it. Okay, so this is going to be so on this function, which is the week of year, you give it the date, and then you give it which day of the week you would like your week to start on. So here it's going to be, for me, I'm going to make it start from Sunday. But if you want it on any other day, you can make it day.Monday, day.Tuesday, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now we are building our week of year, which is the week number, basically. And oh, I can't work well with this. Okay, sorry for that. Screen. Okay. So now this is going to be a whole number. Okay, and now for the quarter as well, if you want to add the quarter, you can add the quarter here. So you can add the quarter of year too. But this will just insert it as a number. And I personally prefer to see it as like Q1, Q2, Q3. So how I do it is that I add a new column, and first I start with the date.quarter of year function, and it always inserts double date for some reason. And you give it the date, and it will insert the quarter as a number. But what you can do is that you can concatenate the Q onto it, but you need to also convert this this value because this is a number. So you need to convert it to a text to be able to do the concatenation. So number dot text dot to text, sorry. And so I think this should work now. Okay. So now it's Q1, Q2, and so on. All right, so I think we're done. I don't think we'll need anything more for now. We can add more columns, but let's just dive into the meat of PowerPivot. Okay, so now we're gonna load it. We're gonna load our data sources. We need to load them to the data model, and we load them in the memory. So here on the close and load, don't press close and load right away, because this will load all your tables in the memory and also in new worksheets on your workbook. So the better way to do it is to do close and load to, and then you click on only create a connection. So this will load everything in your memory, and then add this data to the data model, and this will load your tables as well in the Excel data model, which is PowerPivot. So when we press OK, the data is going to start to load here. Okay, and now we can start going to our data model. So you can go to your data model either under the data tab here, there's manage data model, or under PowerPivot, there's this green button that says manage to. So if you click on it, we're going to go to our data model, and we do have our tables here. So we've imported our tables through Power Query. There's another way as well to import tables into PowerPivot, which is using here under the Home tab. There's some different data sources here. So from SQL Server, from Access, and from some data service, data feeds. So you can do that too. But the thing is, if you import your data using the PowerPivot window, you're going to be limited on your data transformations. You won't be able to do any data transformations except almost just removing columns from your data. That's all. But the beauty of Power Query is that it gives you the flexibility to do any data transformations or any data cleaning that you would like to do. Okay, so now we have our tables here, and I want to show you something here, which is the diagram view. And the diagram view, it contains here our tables as a diagram. Okay, and I want to try now building a pivot table without actually, because we don't have any relationships between our tables, and we'll speak about relationships in a bit. But let's start building a pivot table right now before creating any relationships. So if I insert a new pivot table here to this existing worksheet, and under the products table here, I'll just select, for example, the product name. And then under this, from the sales table, I'm just going to drag here the order quantity. And as you can see here, we're getting the same figure for all the products. So you would normally expect in a pivot table that your numbers would be split, right? That you would normally expect to see the order quantity for each product. But here you can't see, or you can see only one figure, which is this figure is the total number of order quantity for all the products in the products table that are in the sales table as well. Okay, and the reason for that is that we don't have any relationships between the tables, and these relationships are what enable your products table to filter your sales table and give you the order quantity for each product. Okay, so and you can see here as well that you have a yellow warning here that says relationships between tables may be needed. You can try to auto-detect the relationships, but I wouldn't recommend you try doing that because sometimes PowerPivot auto-detects it incorrectly. So it's better that you build the relationships yourself. And I like to build them visually through the diagram view. So I'm going to go to PowerPivot and then Manage. And here I'm going to start building relationships between my data. And relationships are common columns between the tables that enable your what we call dimension tables to filter your fact tables. So in data modeling, we have two types of tables. We have dimension tables and fact tables. So these tables here are the customers, products, territories, and calendar. They're called dimension tables. Okay, let me just write that down. I'm not sure if I can. It's not working. Okay. So these are called dimension tables, and they give context to your data. And the data containing and the table containing your transactions is called a fact table. So the fact table is usually the data containing your transactions. So it's your sales table if you're working in a sales environment or a retail environment. And it is if you're working in a call center, then it's the table containing the transactions, which are your calls, for example. So what you need to do is to connect these tables in order for these tables here, the dimension tables, to filter the fact table. Okay, so we're going to start connecting them through common columns here. So I'm going to connect here the date column on my calendar to my order date, because my calendar table is going to be able to filter my sales table using the dates so that I know how many orders we've done in the year 2011 or 2012 or during the first quarter or second quarter. Okay, and so now we have a relationship, and this relationship is called a one-to-many relationship. And as you can see here, there is a direction here for the filtration, which is denoted by this arrow, and this arrow might be too small for you to see. Let me just try here to magnify if possible. So you can see here the direction of the arrow. It's going from the calendar table towards the sales table. Okay, and this is called a one-to-many relationship, and the reason for that is that the dates on the calendar table, on the date column of the calendar table, they are unique. Okay, so this is why it is on the one side of the relationship, and the dates on the order date column of the sales table, they repeat. Okay, so this is why for each date on the one date on the calendar table, you could have many dates on the order date column of the sales table. Okay, the dates here are unique. So on the one side, they are unique. On the many side, they repeat. Okay, we're going to do the same as well for the territories here. We're going to connect it to the territory ID on the sales table. And there is a one-to-many relationship as well, because the territories here are unique. And then they're on the products table. For the product ID, we're going to connect that as well, because the products table contains a unique list of what our products are, of our products. And then for the customers table as well, this contains a unique list of our customers as well, and we'll connect it to the sales table through the customer ID. And you might be wondering why I am laying out the tables this way, the way I'm laying them out, with dimension tables at the top and fact table at the bottom. Well, this is a good way for you to visualize the tables and the relationships between them. And it's been suggested, and the owner of the idea is Rob Colley, who is a PowerPivot expert. It's called the Colley methodology, and it enables you to envision the relationships, which and the fact that the dimension tables are filtering, or that the filters are flowing from the dimensions table to the fact tables. Okay, so you can think about them as water falling down from a hill like this. Okay, because water will not flow, or water naturally flows from top to bottom unless you have a pump, of course. This is how you can, if you want to pump it from bottom to top, but otherwise it naturally flows from top to bottom using gravity. So this is a good way to envision the relationships between the tables. All right, so we've created the relationships between our tables, and now if we go back to our pivot table, you can see here that it's now been filtered. You can see here that the products are now or the order, each product is getting its right or correct order quantity now, and because the products table is now filtering the sales table, is now able to filter it because we created the relationship between the products table and the sales table. And let me just, okay. So now let's speak about measures and calculated columns. Okay, so let's speak first about calculated columns. They are more familiar to Excel users. So if you go to any of your tables, you can start creating a column, a calculated column. And for example, on the sales table here, you can see I've got a unit price column, and I've got an order quantity column. So if I need to calculate the sales amount, I can multiply the unit price by the order quantity. And I could create a calculated column to do that. So I'll just name this CC sales amount. And because calculated columns have what is called a row context, and that means that they're able to perform calculations row by row, I can write that this is equal to the unit price, so sales. And when we write the columns in PowerPivot, it is a good practice to type the name of the table first, and then type the name of the column between square brackets. Okay, you don't have to do that. I mean, syntax wise, you do not have to do that, but it is a better practice. And the reason for that is to be able to distinguish columns from measures, because when you type measures, or when we type measures, we type them just between square brackets, and we don't type the name of the table. So it is better that you type the name of the table when you're referring to a column. You type the name of the table, and then you start typing the name of the column between brackets. So for this column here, the sales amount, where it's going to be the unit price multiplied by the order quantity. And I'm going to press enter here. So as you can see here, I managed to calculate the sales amount for each transaction here. And please forgive me if I'm doing anything wrong in terms of the business of sales, because I'm not a sales business expert. So I'm here to explain from a pure PowerPivot point of view. Okay, so my background, my business background is in the call center industry, actually, not sales. Okay, so now I've calculated the sales amount, and I'm gonna close here. So we could actually calculate, we could create a measure to calculate the total sales amount. And this is simply by just summing up this column. We can do that. We can sum up this column here called sales amount. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a measure to do that. And I'm doing this definitely the wrong way, but I'm just doing it for demonstration. So I'm going to go to measures here in order to create a measure, and I'm going to go to new measure. And here it's going to ask you about the table name that you need to assign the measure to. The measure will work the same way if you assign it to any table. It doesn't matter. So whatever table you assign it to, it won't matter. But because this is a calculation done for sales, we're just going to choose the sales table. And I'm just going to name this sales amount wrong because I'm definitely doing it the wrong way. And it's going to be simply using the sum function. I'm going to go to my sales table and I'm going to sum up the CC sales amount column here. And I can check my formula to make sure it's correct. The syntax is correct, and it is. And this is going to be a currency, no decimal places. So this sum function simply just sums up a column. Okay, so you know what? This column, I want you to sum the values of it. This is what the sum function does. And I'm going to click OK here. So as you can see here, the wrong part of me doing it is not that the numbers are wrong. The numbers are correct, but I'm not doing it the most efficient way. Okay, so these numbers are correct. If we double check these numbers, they are going to be correct. However, I'm doing it the wrong way because I created a calculated column, and a calculated column consumes memory out of your RAM. Okay, and it also adds hard disk space. So and this is not the optimal use of a calculated column as well. And I'll show you what is the better use of a calculated column. So right now I do have the correct figures. Okay, and this what I created here is called a measure. Okay, so and as you can see here, it has an FX beside it here under the pivot table fields under the sales table. It has an FX beside it, so this denotes that this is a measure. And the other thing is that what we created here on the order quantity as well is also a measure, but it is a different kind of measure because this is called an implicit measure. And this is what we call an explicit measure. And I want to explain the difference between an implicit measure and an explicit measure. So the main difference between them is that on an implicit measure, you're created by just dragging a column from a table towards the summation of values section here, and it is only limited to the standard calculations of a pivot table that you have here. So you can't create customized formulas to suit your business case. So this definitely has much less power than an explicit measure. The other thing is that for an implicit measure, you always have to format it each time you insert it. Okay, so for example here, and it will be apparent when we have 4 or more digits on our number, you would prefer to have your number look like this, 2123. You prefer to have a comma so that it would be easier to read. And here as well, on the bigger number, 274,914, I can read it in an easier way if I format it in this way. So for an explicit measure, so right now I've formatted it, but if I remove my explicit measure, which is the sum of order amounts here, and if I, oh sorry, order quantity, and then I add again the order quantity, you can see here that the formatting that I had added has now disappeared, and I have to reformat it again. Okay, so this is one of the downsides, or another downside for an implicit measure. And of course, seasoned DAX developers, they don't create implicit measures, and they follow the better practice of creating what is called an explicit measure. So in case of the explicit measure, you saw that when I created a measure, I assigned the number formatting to it, which was a currency. And each time you create it, and or if you remove it from the pivot table, and if you re-add it again, you will always get the correct number formatting because you had already assigned your number formatting here under the formatting options. So it will always be inserted with that formatting, no matter how many times you remove it or re-add it again. Okay, and that is in addition, of course, to the fact that you can write whatever formula you can write here, so you have more options when it comes to customizing your calculation in case of an explicit measure. Right, so why is this calculation done the wrong way? The reason it is done the wrong way is that I actually don't need to I don't need to insert a calculated column in order to calculate the sales amount. In order to iterate my sales table, go row by row and multiply the unit price by the order quantity, because there's actually a function that can do that for me. So there is another function called the SUMX function. And this SUMX function can go through my sales table. So it takes two inputs. The first input is the table that you would like it to iterate through. So I can give it my sales table, and I can ask this function to iterate that through that sales table and perform a certain calculation, which in my case here is going to be the order quantity multiplied by the unit price. So I can actually increase the size of the formula here. You can increase the size by pressing and holding Control and using the mouse up wheel up and down in order to increase or decrease the size of your formula. So so this will just go through this sales table row by row and then perform this calculation, multiply the value in that particular row that it's going through for the order quantity by the value in that particular row of the unit price. And then at the end, after doing the iteration and multiplying each value of the order quantity by the unit price in each row, it will just sum up all the values. So you can think about it as creating a virtual column in your table and performing this calculation and then summing up that whole virtual column and giving you the result at the end. And now I'm going to give it a currency with 0 decimal places, and I'm going to click OK. And this will give me, oh, I actually forgot to name the measure. So I'm going to name it sales amount here. And I'm going to click OK. So is everyone following with me? I'm not sure. Do you have any questions at this point? Any questions on the chat? I'm not sure. No questions?
They're being answered as we go.
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry.
So there was some discussion on the chat about different terms and fact and dimension and lookup tables and other ways of naming. Mostly that some people were also mentioning some resources to learn M and Power Query, but I don't think there are any questions at the moment. Let me know if I missed something. Okay, thanks.
All right, no problem. Okay, so this is also, of course, the sales amount measure that we created here. This is also an explicit measure that we created using a customized calculation. All right, so if this sales amount wrong measure here, we can delete it. I'm going to go to manage measures here, and I'm going to actually delete that measure because we don't need it anymore. And let's close that. And I'm also going to go here to my PowerPivot window, and I'm going to delete this CC sales amount column. So I want to say something actually about measures. Measures are not they are not stored in memory like calculated columns. They are actually calculated on the spot when you insert them. Okay, so they don't use memory capacity, or they don't use memory on your computer. They actually use CPU power. So the measure gets calculated the moment that you insert it, just like this. When you insert it, it gets calculated. Okay, and so this is a better use of the resources on your computer, and you will find yourself when you're creating data models and writing PowerPivot or you're writing DAX formulas, you're going to use more measures than calculated columns. So I personally probably create out of every 10 formulas that I write, maybe 8 would be measures and 2 would be calculated columns. Okay, so find yourself writing more measures than calculated columns, and it is the better way in general of achieving your calculations, unless you absolutely need the calculated column, which their optimal use is to split your tables or to filter your tables. And let's have an example about that. So I'm going to go back here to my PowerPivot window, and the better use of a calculated column, or rather than to calculate your sales amount, is, for example, you can create a column called discount type, for example. And here you can see here that there is a unit price discount and there is a unit price. So this unit price discount, if you divide the unit price discount by the unit price, you will get a percentage, right? So let's say that we want to classify our discounts into different categories, so low or medium or high or no discount in case the unit price discount is a 0. So we can write a calculated column in order to do that. So let's write a calculated column to do that. So we do have an if function here in DAX, which works pretty much like the if function in Excel. So the first thing is the logical test, and the logical test here, I'm actually going to divide the unit price discount by the unit price. So let's assume that a discount between 0 and 5% is going to be a low discount, and between 5 and 10% is going to be a medium discount, and anything greater than 10% is going to be a high discount. And if we have 0 discount there, then it's no discount. So I'm going to divide the unit price discount by the unit price, and I can use actually the divide function here. And the divide function, it gives you a blank in case the calculation creates an error. this is a good way to you know, avoid having an error and having a blank instead. So the numerator here is going to be the unit price discount, and the denominator, we're going to divide that by the unit price. So we're going to divide the unit price discount by the unit price. Okay, and the third argument, we're just going to avoid the third argument, and it's going to be giving us the alternate result of a blank, just like when you have an if error. So if you have an error, what's the alternate result? Here it's going to be a blank. And of course, in the if error, you need to specify what the alternate result here, but in the divide function, you don't have to specify, and it's going to default to a blank. Okay, so the result, if true, if this is greater than or equal to 0, so greater than or equal to 0, and also, so if we need to do an AND condition in DAX, we do have an AND function, but we can also do double ampersand like this, and so we can test if this is greater than or equal to 0, and if it is less than or equal to 5%, 0.05. So if this is true, what we need to do is to display low. And otherwise, we're just going to put another if here. And if this is greater than 0.05 and it's less than to 0.10, okay, then what we need to do is medium. And if it is greater than an if here, and if it is greater than 0.1, then high, and otherwise it's going to be no discount, because this leaves only the 0. I'm going to close all my brackets, and I'm going to press enter here.
Abdou?
Yes.
I was just also again thinking of people who might not be so familiar with DAX. You mentioned this language here was DAX.
Yes.
So what's just briefly, what's the difference between the two languages that we already use today, M and DAX?
Yeah, so M is the language used in Power Query, and DAX is the language used in PowerPivot. So we're now using PowerPivot. So this is why we're using DAX. Previously, when we were preparing the data and the tables, we used the M language in order to construct the calendar table, right? And really all the transformations that we did, so changing the data type, everything is written by Power Query as an M as M code, right? But this is done behind the scenes. So currently we're using DAX, and again, guys, you don't have to become a DAX expert after watching this session, because I cannot make you a DAX expert, you know, in an hour. But this session is all about what is possible. So forget about memorizing the steps, and forget about the feeling of being overwhelmed in this session, because there are things that you don't know. The purpose of the session is to know what is possible and to motivate you to learn in order to utilize the power of DAX. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
No problem. So so now we have split our discounts here into 3 types: high, volume, high, low, and medium. And there's also, is there no discount? what did I do? Oh, this one should not be greater than equal to 0. It should be greater than 0. Done. So in this case, now we're going to have the no discount as well. All right. So now we've classified our discounts into high, medium, and low. And I'm going to close here my PowerPivot window. And I can, let me just delete that here. And I can actually put this discount type as a filter for my table, right? Or I can create a slicer too. So I can now filter my products, my sales amount by products having high discount or medium discount or low discount or no discount at all, the sales amount and this implicit measure of order quantity. So this is the better way of using calculated columns. Calculated columns should be used for filtering your tables, for creating columns where you can classify your data. Okay. And does anyone have any questions about that?
Yes, there's a question here from Brent. He's asking, would it be better in terms of performance if we calculated this calculated column with Power Query, so before bringing the table, instead of calculating it later with DAX?
Yes, it would be better in terms of performance, but I just needed to demonstrate the better use of calculated columns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it's an interesting question. Yeah, good one. And there was a suggestion also if switch formula could be used instead of the nested ifs formulas.
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe we could try it, but I don't think, because I checked the syntax of the switch formula, and let me just check that here. Well, the thing is about the switch formula, you give it an expression, okay, and then you need to give it the value. I haven't used the switch formula a lot, to be honest, but you actually need to give it a value. You can't give it like greater than 0 and yes, and less than 0.05. So you need to give it a value, not a condition. So I don't think it can be used.
Yeah.
No.
And someone, I forgot to mention, to write down who asked, someone was also asking if you could later talk about the difference between row context and filter context, if you have time to do that or to mention that later.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't be in this session. We shouldn't be diving into that topic right now. But let me just tell you, the row context is basically being able to perform a calculation row by row. Okay, so to give me a certain to give me a certain formula, and I'll go row by row. Okay, and I'll perform that calculation just like the sales amount. When we calculated the sales amount here, you know what? I'm gonna go row by row, and I'm gonna multiply the unit price by the order quantity. Okay, so this is row context, and the SumX function as well that we use to calculate the sales amount measure, right? It does have a row context. It can go row by row, multiply the unit price by the order quantity, and then it will store the result in a column. Let's say call it a virtual column, this column, and then it will just add up all these results in the column and give you the final figure. Okay, so this is row context, being able to go through a table, iterate through the rows row by row, and perform a certain calculation. That is row context. And calculated columns, they do have row context. Filter context is basically the aggregation of different filters that you would have in order to filter your calculation and give you the desired results. Okay, so for example, on this cell here, and it's applicable in measures. So measures, they get affected by the filter context. So in this cell here, for example, it's affected by a few filter contexts here, or actually two. It's the filter context of this product name. So this cell is being filtered by this product name, and there is another filter context, which is the discount type as well. So it's being filtered as well by the discount type. Okay, so these are the filters affecting this cell right now. Okay, and every cell, of course, has a different filter context depending on what is affecting it. And if you add slicers as well, these would affect the filter context. And then there are functions in PowerPivot that enable you to manipulate the filter context in order to get the results that you desire.
Yeah,
okay?
overwrite any possible filter context.
Yeah, and
if you don't want them to affect the calculations.
Yeah, like the calculate function, which we're gonna use on this session, that enables you to manipulate the filter context. But we're not gonna dive deep into this topic because this is just an introduction and we're trying to just see what is possible. Okay, so
thank you.
So now, no problem. So now we have explained the difference between measures and calculated columns. We've explained also the difference between measures, between explicit measures and implicit measures. And we said that the better DAX developers, they never create implicit measures and they always create explicit measures. Okay, so please always follow that habit of creating explicit measures. Okay, so we've created our total sales measure here, or the sales amount measure. Let's create another measure here, which can tell us how many days we sold on. So I'm just going to open a new tab here. I'm going to insert another pivot table. And I'm going to get, for example, the year from the calendar table. And I'm going to create a measure that would tell us how many days we have had sales on. So what we're going to do using that measure is to go through the sales table and calculate the unique number of order dates. So the unique number of dates that we have done sales on. Okay. So let's do that. We do have a function. So number of days we sold on. And again, if what I'm doing is wrong from a business point of view, please forgive me. And so this is going to be the values using the values function. And we're actually going to count the rows, because the values function, what it does, let's just focus on the values function first. The values function, what it does is that it can take a column of a table, okay, and it can give you the unique values of that column, okay. So the column we're going to give to it is the order date column, okay. So the values function is going to give you a table. It's going to return a table containing only the unique values of the order date column. So this will give us the dates on our sales table, right? A list, a table containing the unique list of dates, the unique list of dates on our order date of the sales table. But because the output is a table, we have to use the count rows function in order to count the rows of that table, because the output is a table. We can't use the count function because the count function can count columns, but it can't count tables. But the output of values is a table. So I'm going to use the count rows here in order to calculate the number of days that we sold on, and this is going to be a whole number. I'm going to use a 1000 separator. Well, there are not going to be more than 365 days anyways, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to click OK here. And as you can see here, it gave us the number of days that we sold on, and we can double check our result. So another useful use of calculated columns is to check your results, to double check your results. Okay, and what I can do is that I can insert a column here for the year. Okay, and I can grab over the year column from the calendar table, and this is like doing a VLOOKUP. So I'm actually, through the order date, I'm gonna VLOOKUP my year from the calendar table using the related function. So the related function is used when you need to grab over a column from a dimension table to a fact table. Okay, so I'm gonna grab over my calendar, my year column from the calendar table, and this is gonna be done because we do have a relationship, and we are currently, because we are in the sales table, we are on the many side of the relationship. So you use the related function when you are on the many side of the relationship. And I'm gonna press enter here. Okay, and now if we just filter on a certain year, okay, and we can, for example, copy these values. Okay, this is, and let's just paste values here. Oh, I should be. Okay, I think I just need to paste. I can paste values. Okay, that's fine. So let's just paste here, and then I am gonna remove the duplicates from here. And this is just a quick way to check that. So as you can see here, we've got 212 days, which matches our number here, 212 for the year 2011. And if we check for the other years, we should get the correct numbers as well. Okay, so now we managed to get the number of days that we sold on, and we can from that calculate the average sales per day, which is simply by dividing our sales amount by the number of days we sold on. Let's just grab our sales amount measure here. And as you can see here, the moment I inserted the measure, it got inserted with the correct number formatting without any issues, because it is an explicit measure. So let's create another measure, which is the average sales per day. And this is going to be by dividing the sales amount, measure, by the number of days we sold on. And this is going to be a currency and 0 decimal places. So this gives us the average sales per day, and this is a good measure of our sales, because, for example, while in some years the sales amount is greater. So for example, here in 2012, for example, the sales amount is 33 million, while in 2014 the sales amount is 20 million, but actually we made the 20 million in 6 months as opposed to 33 million in a whole year. So that means that our 2014 sales, we had a better year on that year because our average sales per day was higher. Okay, so now we can also calculate the number of transactions or orders that we made, which we can do by doing the same thing that we've done here on the number of days that we sold on, number of transactions or number of orders. So using the values function, we can grab over from the sales table. We can grab the sales order ID. So this, because we need to get the unique number of sales order IDs, because they actually they repeat on the table. So I can show you that in a moment. And let's check our formula. It's correct. Click OK here. So as you can see here, on the sales order ID, the order IDs, they do repeat here. That's weird. They were repeating, I think. Oh, I think I need to hold the filters. Yeah, they are repeating. Okay. So as you can see here, the order IDs, they do repeat. So this is why we need to get the unique number of orders. So it's basically under each order, there's a certain product being ordered with its quantity and the unit of the price and whether there's a discount on it or not. Okay, so this will enable us to calculate our number of orders. And now we can also calculate the average number of orders per day, which is basically by dividing the number of orders by the number of days. And now we can do another measure, which here, for example, let's say that we want to calculate the sales for the orders that had a discount between 5% and 10%. Okay, so we want to iterate through our table and basically calculate the discount percentage of our order, which is by dividing the unit price discount by the unit price, and calculate the sales amount for that. Okay, for these orders that have a discount between 5% and 10%. So there is a great function that we can use to do that, which is the filter function, and it can help us to do that. Sales for orders with discount 5% to 10%. So I'm actually going to use something called variables, and variables is a way in DAX formulas for you to write some variables in order to make your code easier to read. And they are actually not variables, they are more like constants, but the syntax is that they are variables, or because you have to type the keyword var. So equals var. So I'm going to create, first of all, a variable, which is going to be a table. So I'm going to give it the prefix of TBL. You can, of course, name it anything. Discounted orders. So I'm just going to name it TBL discounted orders. And this is going to be by filtering my sales table. So this filter function, it has a row context. Okay, this filter function can go through a table and apply a certain formula. Okay, and you can use it to do a test. So you can apply that test, and then it will filter that table based on that test, so that it would only include the rows on that table that would match that particular test or that particular condition that you're gonna give to it. Okay, so this so the table we're gonna filter, we're gonna go through the sales table. So this will give us a subset of the sales table, a portion of the sales table. So what portion do we need to get? Because we need to get the orders that had a discount between 5 and 10%. So the expression here is that dividing the sales unit price discount by the sales unit price. So this is going to be our test, is going to be greater than or equal to 0.05. And this test as well is going to be less than or equal to 0.1. Okay, so we are filtering the sales table for orders having a discount, or for items in the orders having a discount between 5% and 10%. So right now, what we've created is just a table, okay? But we need to take that table and perform a calculation with it, or perform a calculation on it. So this table is going to be an input to another calculation, which is going to be in the result, our results variable. So this is going to be using the calculate function. So the calculate function can manipulate your filter context or apply certain filters to a calculation or to a measure. Okay, and the measure we're going to do here is the sales amount, and the filter we're going to apply to it is simply the table that is a subset of our sales table. So that means that we want to apply this calculation to that subset of the sales table. Okay, and we have to use the filter function here because we're putting a condition. We're trying to filter using a condition. We're not trying to filter using a value. Okay, and we don't want to go deeper into the calculate function, but in this case we have to use the filter function. And now we're going to return our result. And here, this is going to be a currency, and it's going to be with 0 decimal places. And we're going to click OK here. And so this is the sales for orders with discounts between 5% and 10%. Now we can double check our result. So what we can do is that we can check here discount. We can create a calculated column discount 5% to 10%. And this calculated column is going to be by dividing the unit price discount by the unit price. And this is going to be greater than or equal to 0.05. And this is also going to be less than or equal to 0.1. So this is going to give us true or false. So now here it's going row by row. It's checking whether the discount was between 5 and 10%. The unit, so the discount is by dividing the unit price discount by the unit price. If the discount was between 5 and 10%, it's going to give us a true. Otherwise, it's going to give us a false. So if we actually filter that for only the true values, we should get here. So another place where your measures appear is here at the bottom of the table that you assigned the measure to. So because all our measures were assigned to the sales table, which doesn't make any difference, as we mentioned, you can assign them to any table, but it's just that the calculations that we're making are related to the sales table. So this is why we assigned them to the sales table. So another place that you can write measures and even see the results of your measures, and the results actually they react to the filters that you apply here. So right now you can see here that this is the sales amount, 37,135,095 for the filters that I applied here to the table, and so this is for the discount between 5 and 10%. This is for all the years, and you can see here that we have the same figure here as well. Okay, so this measure was like the hardest one that we created, which is it enabled us to go row by row, perform a certain test, and then manipulate the filters on our sales amount calculation in order to get the result of or the desired result of that we want from our calculation. So I've finished my presentation here. It's 8:10 p.m. Guys, if you have any questions, just let me know.
As a summary of the session, this was a very comprehensive session, especially for those who are new to this topic. Would you like to just summarize some of the key points of the importance of learning DAX and PowerPivot for Excel users, people who work with data?
Yeah, so right now, as you've seen, PowerPivot is a very powerful tool. We can do some really powerful calculations. We can go row by row and perform the calculations that we want. We can, because we have a data model as well, we can handle millions of rows of data without any issues. You can create as many dimensions as you want to be able to slice and dice your data the way that you want to slice them and dice them. I do some really powerful calculations at work using PowerPivot that otherwise would take a lot of manual work to be done in normal Excel, or even be impossible. So for example, you can average the last 3 Mondays, the results of the last 3 Mondays. However, build into that you want to exclude your holidays. If you have any stat holidays, you can exclude that from the calculation automatically. By creating, for example, a holidays table and excluding the holidays from your calculation. Okay, so it is really powerful, especially the time intelligence part, which you probably use on a daily basis. And we have an upcoming session about the time intelligence in DAX as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, it is really powerful. If you have any questions, if you have a certain calculation in your mind right now, and by the way, I do make a lot of mistakes. I don't always get the DAX formulas right at the beginning. Sometimes I miss a certain filter that I did not notice, I was not aware of. It's not easy, but it is possible. And always, of course, you'd always have to double check your calculations, because DAX is very tricky in that sense. So it's always a good idea to check your DAX formulas, just like I was doing right now, because DAX can get very, very tricky. You need to always making sure that you're getting the results that you want and the correct results.
And the problem is not just the DAX itself. It's also that, but if you don't know your data well, you may think that things are related in a way that they aren't, or you may think that a certain formula will produce a certain result and it may not be that way. So
Yes.
that's another thing. It's not something you need to really understand the way your data is structured. If it wasn't you to the one who created all the tables and connections, it can be tricky.
Yes, that's true.
I was going to ask you about machine power, because you were mentioning that you've been doing calculations with many rows. What type of machine in terms of RAM have you been using, and what type of response have you been getting with that type of machine?
Okay, so I would prefer that you would have 16 gigs of RAM or more. I worked with machines that had 8 gigs of RAM and they were a bit on the slow side. And I have on this machine that I'm working with right now, I have 32 gigs of RAM, and things work relatively smooth, very smooth actually. So it is better that you would have, because also Windows really consumes a lot of RAM in itself. So I would recommend 16 gigs or more of RAM on your machine. 8 gigs, it will struggle with millions of rows. It will struggle a bit. I mean, it will be a bit slow, especially when it comes to refreshing your data from the data source. But yeah, I would recommend 16 gigs or more for a smooth experience.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, guys? Oh, and there's also another recommendation to make sure to use 64-bit version of Excel.
Yeah.
That's another important one, yeah. Because if you have, if I'm not mistaken, if you have 32-bit version, it doesn't matter how much RAM you have on your machine. Using the 32-bit, I think you'll be always limited to using 8 megabytes. Gigabytes of RAM.
4 gigabytes, I think.
4 or 8, at least on the Power Query side. I'm not sure in Power Pivot and DAX, but I've read that somewhere. Okay. Any other questions? People are asking if you will be able to provide the sample files for exercising purposes.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I can provide you the sample file. Yeah.
Yeah, or even the file that you created a file from scratch here. So
yeah.
And the data is publicly available?
Yeah, this is the AdventureWorks data. It's a free fictitious data set from Microsoft. So you can download it for, actually you download it usually as a SQL Server image, and then you put it on your SQL Server. There's someone whose microphone is
yeah, I'll check that.
Yeah. Okay, so you can download that from the internet. You can download this data set from the internet, and you can put it on your SQL Server and then export it onto Excel. So this is what I've done. I did that. So
thank you.
I want to add one more thing. If you are running into issue with the performance or anything, there is a DAX Studio which can be of your help, which will allow you to whether you have a problem with CPU or RAM, it will allow you to judge, because it gives you separate analysis for how much power your CPU is consuming and how much RAM you are consuming and where the problem is. So it's a great tool to use when you are running into issue with the performance.
Yes, that's true. DAX Studio is a great tool in order to measure the performance of your measures and know how many milliseconds it took to calculate that measure. And so, yes, I agree. Great tip, Vivek.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen now then,
Yeah.
Abdou? I don't know, unless someone has any question related to the file, then we can just chat for a little while before we end our session.
Sure. Okay, so stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
No.
Anyone else? One thing, you may feel free to turn on your video cameras and feel free to comment, to greet, to ask any questions to Abdou.
Overall, Abdul, great presentation. I didn't join entire presentation because I had another meetup, but last 1 hour I was part of it. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, Vivek.
Yeah, so we have about 28 people in total attending. Some people left. I guess it's very late for people in Europe and even in Asia. So some people left, but we are still 18 of us, I think. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. As usual, I will be sending in maybe 2 days or so, or over the weekend, I'll be sending an email with the file from Abdou and any other useful information I may have to send you, available to send you. Yeah.
And I want to say that I'm currently creating a course about PowerPivot and DAX. So just make sure to follow me on YouTube and subscribe to the newsletter as well. And hopefully you will know when I create the course, when I release it. And if you're interested, you can join definitely.
Abdou, some time ago, I told you you were a brave man to try to explain PowerPivot and DAX. You still are.
Thank you. Thank you. I know it's
working at it.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's a very comprehensive presentation, and I know that we have definitely under explained DAX and PowerPivot, but it's just that the time is limited. So this is what we can do in about an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah,
it's actually been 2 hours almost.
Yeah, almost 2 hours. It's a very difficult topic, but like you were saying, and I agree, the important thing is to know that it is possible. Just the idea of understanding that instead of having to be forced to have all our data merged into just one table to be able to generate different pivot tables out of that, like we would normally do without a data model, knowing that we can just have separate tables and connect them, and then having all those tables available to grab different fields from each table inside one only pivot table and get the results, the combination of that it's I think one of the most important takeaways from the concept of understanding the concept of PowerPivot and a data model, and from there people will learn as they practice.
Yes, and the fact that you're able to connect to different data sources too, because for example at work all the data at work is in databases, so I can't physically get the data, copy it and paste it in Excel and then start working on it. And I know there are other ways in Excel as well to get data from databases. There's the old connectors, but what I mean is that your data could be in the databases and it could be in some files too, and you're able to merge all this data from different sources and perform calculations on them. And of course you can handle millions of rows as well, which is beyond the capacity of regular Excel as well. So that's another thing that the regular Excel cannot do, in addition to the calculations that you are able to perform. You're being able to iterate row by row, being able to filter the tables the way that you want to filter them and to produce the desired results.
Yeah. So there's a lot of thank yous here. People, I think, in general, enjoyed the session. Yeah, Oakley's commenting, wouldn't it be amazing if you could learn M code and DAX in a couple of hours?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, DAX, when I was learning, I'll tell you maybe 4 years back, I read Marco Russo's book 3 chapter, maybe 10 times before I can move forward. And
Yeah.
that was one of the question one of the attendee wrote is what is the difference between filter context and row context?
Yeah.
10 times I might have gone through that chapter, then only I was able to like visualize what it is. So DAX is very easy once you learn. Most difficult part in my DAX learning was that, because if you don't understand that, if you are going to switch the filter context to row context to filter context, it's very difficult to understand. It's very easy once you get it. So I highly recommend that. Most of you are experts, so I don't need to, but this is my experience I'm sharing.
Yeah, me too. I had the same experience or a similar experience, Vivek. It's difficult at the beginning when you're learning because there's a lot of concepts that are new for you because of how your mind is set up when dealing with the normal Excel, with the regular legacy Excel. And then there's a bit of a shift of mindset there. The fact that you cannot edit individual cells in tables, the fact that you're now dealing with that DAX deals with columns instead of like, you know, instead of cells. So this is a shift of mindset that is that is difficult at the beginning to do.
I want to ask one question to everybody. As Abdul, he showed the data model, PowerPivot and all. When you go to business and ask, are they looking mainly for tables or the option that is of having 4 charts and analyzing those chart with the filter? Are they asking mostly only table level information or visualization also that is available? No, yes.
I can speak, or if anybody else doesn't want to speak. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yes for table, how many? Mostly table.
In my case, mostly tables, because the type of work that I've done is more about, for example, automating statements generation and a different statement for each client or a different statement for each vendor, and perform calculations. And so in that regard is more about numbers and tables and chart and tables, not so much about visualization of the data.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just because that's what I've been doing more. It doesn't mean that it's the most. It's what is more asked, requested by the clients. It's just coincidence.
Okay, thank you again, Abdul. I have to leave now. It was a nice session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Vivek.
Vivek.
Bye.
So for me, actually, visualization is a big part in my work, and I've been able to build some interactive dashboards using PowerPivot, and you know, it had a good impact on the people. And I can assure you that if you learn PowerPivot, if you learn DAX very well, you'll be able to differentiate yourself from other Excel users to a great extent. Okay, because this is a more rare skill to have than Excel and Excel formulas and VLOOKUP and all that. It's a more rare skill to have. You can differentiate yourself in the market if you learn PowerPivot and DAX.
Absolutely. Oakley, you were raising your hand. Do you want to say something or ask something? You are muted though.
No, I was just saying goodbye to Vivek.
Oh, okay. Richard.
Well, I could say a lot, but you know, I agree with what everybody says. My issue is over 25 years, I was always stunned how people weren't interested in charts. The clients, charts are just seem to be too simplistic. And if you have a small amount of data, a client can grasp a chart to some extent, like data points. But once it gets bigger and complicated, they gloss over. Plus, also they need to see real numbers. They have to actually get the values in their hands and be able to look at it. So then with the implementation of Power BI and before it Tableau and all, suddenly it's sexy, right? And the problem I see is sexy's just that the thrill wears off after a while, with sexy charts. And it's frustrating. And the other thing about all of this, the other point about what Abdou's saying is it's unbelievable what you can do with DAX and PowerPivot, and when you have Power Query sitting on top of it, and then pivot table sitting down underneath all of that. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of knowledge. It's a lot of experience. It's a lot of effort. And the problem is that the valuation of our skills is going the other way. Everybody thinks they want us cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right? And so there's sort of a point at which they cross, right? And keeping people learning all this stuff it's going to be a problem unless companies are willing to pay us for the trouble, because otherwise, and that concerns me. That really concerns me, especially now with so many of us sort of drifting. So anyway, you asked, Celia. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's good.
My problem
And
is I love the technology. The technology is amazing, but people don't realize the impact.
yes, you are breaking a little bit, but I think that what happens also is that, like we were commenting a few times before, most people don't even know what a table is in Excel. So let alone knowing that PowerPivot and DAX and Power Query are in there. So when you present them a result like those type of automations I was talking about before, it's not possible for the user to understand the value of what they see is that the value at the time they save, but they don't understand the amount of work that's behind all that engine. It's all that gear with different components. I've had situations where the client is even trying to find a cell where he could take a peek into the formula and try maybe to manipulate it just because he thinks the result is not getting him what he wants. And then, oh no, there's not a formula. And even this last week, the same thing. So I had different queries with Power Query, and then I had the tables, and some of the people at the office were in charge of auditing the results that I was producing. And they were confused because they couldn't see the formula because it was just a Power Query table. So there were no formulas there. So.
If auditors see this, they freak out. I lost one major client that I had for 10 years when they got a new CFO. And he took one look at all the modeling that I did with DAX, and very comprehensive and high-end DAX, as you guys know I can do. And he just fired me right on the spot because he says, I don't want one guy knowing how to make everything work. And all the people are standing. I met the guy once, right? And he just said, no, we're going to go with triggers. So he didn't want them. And it wasn't personal. I did hit him, punch him, but other than that, it wasn't. But this is a risk, right? Because like you said, they want to see what's going on. They want to audit, for example, either with small a or big A. And you try to explain what Abdou just shown or some of the other big models, and they just go, oh my God, I'm at risk. And if I was him, with what I know, I'd say the same thing. So what has to happen is this has to be sold to the business market. And nobody's doing it. Microsoft, least of all. Nobody's doing it. Nobody knows how to market this. The tragedy is that it's infinite what we can do with this. And yet, the more we approach infinity, the harder it's going to be.
Yeah, I have been told by people in the company that you know, what I was doing in using PowerPivot was of a lot of value to them, a lot of value, and it does really provide a lot of value, huge value. And
well, what if you get hit by a truck? Or
then
let's put it better. What if you win the lottery?
Which
what if I win the lottery? I will retire early.
The same result for them, right?
Then they're screwed. You know, then they're screwed. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate in the sense that's what clients are saying, and they're probably right. So which means somehow we have to explain to people how strong and powerful this is, and have more people who can support it, and blah blah blah. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, but in a sense, providing value can help you maintain your job, right? So, I mean, this is the good side of it. I know that the bad side is that if something happens to you, then the business loses. Or I'm not sure. I mean, maybe there are other people who can do PowerPivot very well. I'm not the best person who writes DAX formulas on this earth. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure there are other people, but at least you can keep your job. I mean, at least you can provide value, and they can feel that you are of value to them, and you can keep your job, especially in these tough times, right?
We can sit down and have a beer. I don't know if you drink beer and argue that.
Yeah, there's different situations and scenarios, I guess.
Well done.
Okay, yeah, it's been 2 hours. I think it's more than time to wrap up. Abdou, any last information or any words where people can find you? And I'll end the meeting after that.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is Excel Bonanza. So you can find me there. I'm not sure if I can type it. Actually, there's a software that I was going to use to type stuff, but I don't know why it's not working.
That's fine. You can just say, and then I'll send the information on the email.
Yeah, so it's Excel Bonanza. This is my YouTube channel and my website, excelbonanza.com. And you can find me there. Make sure to follow me, subscribe to the channel. I'm producing at least a video every week these days, trying to be more consistent. So make sure to follow me, and hopefully you get value out of my YouTube channel and out of my content. And you know, please make sure to check my courses. I'll send you a list of my courses. I have courses on VBA, Power and pivot tables as well, and dashboards. I'll send you that list in Celia's email. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and reach out if you have any questions or anything that you want to tell me.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you so much, Abdou. It was a great session.
Thanks,
and reminding people that next session will be with Abdou again. He will go deeper in DAX, talking about time intelligence, how to calculate time intelligence measures with DAX. So looking forward to it. It will be in about 2 weeks. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Fantastic.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Abdul.
Thank you.